afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the online Hall Politics Lab on March 19 for already 2021. Today, we are very happy to welcome Lou Safra, who is an assistant professor at Sciences Po Paris. And Lou has published extensively on a broad range of topics using different methodologies to understand our political preferences, but more broadly speaking, our societal preferences, using insights from evolutionary psychology, cognitive sciences, using a variety of methods, publishing in very interesting journals such as Nature Communications and Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And today, Lou will talk about the way populists look. Well, you know, that is not unrelevant given the events in the Netherlands this week, where the populist right have at least sort of had a pretty good streak, equating their 2002 results. So, Lou, I'm not sure if you're going to talk with us about the Dutch elections, but we look forward to your talk. Gijs will do the Q&A. For those of you who are not so familiar with our procedures, Lou will present first, and then there's the opportunity to ask questions. You do this by typing your question in the Q&A box, then Gijs will read it out, and Lou will answer. Okay. Lou, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen now, and normally you should see it. Oh, yes, do you see it?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so, well, thank you again for inviting me. I'm very happy to present this project. So I have to say that it is an ongoing project. So I'm really, I would be really happy to have your feedback on this and on like future directions we can investigate. So really do not hesitate if you find, well, if you have ideas of how we can conduct this project further, I would be very happy to hear it. So today I'm going to talk about the link between politics, populisms, and MPs' looks, and about what it can tell us about the political communication. And so, So the this work comes from, well, it's anchored in a larger literature, and it's been from 15 years of research that we see that there is a link between candidates' faces, voting preference, and even election outcomes. This is a seminal paper by Alexander Todorov on the topic. So that just by presenting the faces of candidates.
Lou, sorry,
yeah.
We just see your start screen. Just
I was sure it's going to not work the way I want it. Okay, I'm going to do it this way. Normally,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do it this way. I'm sorry, it's not very good looking, but at least you can see it.
Yes.
So this is the paper by Alexander Todorov showing that just by presenting the faces of candidates to elections, US elections, you can predict the actual election outcomes with quite a good accuracy. And this has led to a large literature on the link between faces and leader preferences and election outcomes, both showing that actually you can predict to some extent the results of elections just using the looks of the candidates. And on the other end, that individuals have some preferences for different types of looks depending on the context they live in, such as wartime context versus peacetime context, but also depending on their political affiliation with, well, voters, like Republican voters preferring not the same type of faces in their candidate than Democrat voters. So there is this large literature on the politician faces, and this is actually the rationale for looking further at this question. And notably, when we wonder about the effect of politician faces, we can wonder about which face we're talking about, because actually a same candidate or same politician can present himself in a variety of ways, and this is as any of us, but actually there are different times, notably in his political life, but also compared to the election, the ongoing election, in which he can communicate or she can communicate using visuals. So here, for instance, is example of Donald Trump. The first image is a print ad The second one is a internet ad, and the third one is the first official picture of President Trump. Former President Trump. And so you can see that actually we have a range of different faces, different poses, different emotions that actually carry a different message, with more aggressive in the first picture, like more satisfied, dominant, and here more serious. So we can wonder which type of information is carried by these different type of portraits and different moments. And actually, the question of political ads has been already well studied in the political and science literature and political psychology literature. However, the question of the official portraits seems to have received a little bit less attention, while actually political portraits seems also a very interesting kind of political communication. Actually, they are not as transparent as pre-election ads or electoral ads, because here we talk about an elected politician. So it's no longer in kind of campaigning, and we don't know actually to who this person is addressing, whether it's a general population or the supporters who voted for it. So it's not that clear what is expressed in this official portrait. And actually, if we look at Donald Trump, there has been a change in his official political portrait, presidential portrait in this mandate, showing that actually it's kind of an exercise. And why it is nice is that it is a standardized exercise. And here's the example for German MP's official portrait. So we have something that is quite standardized. We have always, portraits. There's no like fancy like poses, but quite stereotyped in a way. But still, there are some variations. And here you can see a variety of emotions, notably in this portrait. So actually, from a psychology perspective and like quantitative psychology perspectives, these are very interesting materials because we have something that has some variation but is also very well controlled. So that looks pretty interesting to look at. Further, it is interesting in the political perspective too, because it seems that these official portraits from deputies and MPs carry some political information. And this has notably been shown with this also very well-known paper by Antonakis and Dalgas, showing that kids of 7 years old can predict, just based on the faces of the MPs, the election outcomes in France. And actually, the faces were these official portraits. So it was not campaign ads and so on. It was these official portraits which indicate that there is some political content in them, and that can be interesting to look at. This is another example. It was something that was famous in France. I think some other countries have it also, but it's a game consisting in presenting the official picture of the MP and asking the participant to guess whether is from the right or from the left. And what it shows is that actually individuals are quite good and better than chance for identifying this. So it suggests that, well, there is some information, although this kind of thing is biased because, well, we have an imbalance in terms of gender, age, and so on. But seems that there is maybe something to look at and to investigate in terms of political communication. So we have this question when facing this official portraits, is what is the information carried by this portrait? Do this portrait carry some political values? So, well, is there a look, a specific way of posing that is associated for the electors or for the citizen as advertising some kind of social values or some kind of economic values? Or is it some kind of commitment to a political strategy? So I've been elected for because I am like anti-system and I want to display that I will be anti-system during my mandate. This is another thing that can be displayed in this portrait. And finally, it is also possible that these portraits are used to display himself as good representatives. So like showing that they are close to the kind of general social values of their electors. So not necessarily political ones, but more generally social ones. And this was actually, these are my question, research question. And I focused on populism. Why? Because populism is a multidimensional phenomenon, but also can take different forms. And actually, there are a lot of papers touching that, well, populism is often ill-defined and so on, but there are still kind of precise definition to them that has been proposed. And we have several approaches. We have some kind of ideological approach that is a more, well, the core, defined as a core of populism, which is people-centrism, anti-elitism, and Machiavellism in terms of when presenting political forces. And we have also other aspects that are associated with populism, such as party organization with higher degree of personalization, lower degree of internal democracy within the party. We have also question of political style, call to emotions and violence, and finally, ideological profile. Although populism can be from right and left, there seems to be some content that are common to the different populist parties, such as nativism, anti-immigration, and control of the economy. So my question was to look at whether we can see differences in the MPs' elected portrait and official portrait, depending on these dimensions of populism. Populism was also chosen here because there is a part of populism that is populist rhetoric, so it seems to be particularly interesting in terms of communication and like how these different parties that are characterized by high degree of populism communicate both before the election but also after the election. So my databases. I focus on 3 European countries. Unfortunately, there is not the Netherlands, but as I said, it's like ongoing work. And so I aim to include more countries in the future. So we have Germany, Hungary, and France. Each time is National Assembly or Country Assembly. The specificity is that for France, we have a extended period of time. This is thanks to a collaboration with the French National Assemblée Nationale, National Assembly. So we have data from 1997, so that allows us to have both a cross-sectional comparison and a longitudinal comparison that can be informative. And concerning the party data, I use the V party data sets that come from the variety of democracy. So here again, my goal is also to, in the future, extend to other measures of populism and even of the same characteristics, but from different data sets in order to increase the validity of the results. So this is why it is also still ongoing. So my measure of interest is the level of smile of the DPTs. Why? Because smiling is, well, signaling a affiliative intent, although there are different types of smile. In general, smiling is associated with this affiliative intention. Happiness is actually associated with being perceived as more sociable, more responsible, more trustworthy, and so on, which are characteristics that can be interesting to advertise, at least for some politicians. And so just a quick point. So what I did and what I will present to you is a result based on an automatic detection of smiling from the MP's pictures, because we have, well, an extended number of faces. So here again, my goal is to replicate this finding using participant ratings and happiness perception. So here, once again, it's ongoing work, but I think that there are some interesting findings there. So the first question was to, well, to tell this link between populism and smiling in an ideational approach. So looking at 2 specific variables that have been aggregated: people glorification, so we have a scale going from the party leadership never glorifies and identify with the ordinary people, and to the party leadership always glorifies and identifies with the ordinary people, which they claim to represent. So we have two, well, the scale on populism here, and also anti-elitism, which goes from the leadership of the party never makes statement against the elite, or the leadership of the party makes statement against the elite whenever possible. So here again, we have a scale. So these two measures have been aggregated into a single populism variable. So here are the results that we have when we have data from Germany, France, Hungary, all for the last election, so 2017 and 2018. Each time we control for age and gender, as well as the year of the election, and it's a random effect. It's a random, sorry, it's a mixed effect model with country as a random effect. So you do not see it here, but it's controlled for country too. What you can see is that we have a negative association between the level of populism and the intensity of smiling on the pictures. That goes in a way that we could expect with more populist parties expressing less affiliative emotions. We're not smiling less. So this effect is highly significant, and actually it replicates when we focus on France and consider the 5 last elections. So we have the same significant effect. So here in the model, I dissociated the historical French data from the contemporary data from Hungary and Germany in order not to give too much weight to French data sets. But well, here we see where it replicates. So it indicates that indeed there seems to be a link between the party's populism and the MPs' look on their official portraits. And that calls to go a little bit further and look at whether, well, actually it is due to certain values that are publicized, or specific political strategy, or link with, well, political style. So this was what I investigated then. So in terms of party organization, I had two variables, personalization and internet democracy, and none of them actually are significantly associated with smiling of the portraits when we consider the cross-sectional data. And actually we have well, opposite result for personalization and internet democracy. So suggesting that actually party organization, when we consider only France, suggesting that actually party organization do not seem to be the driver of these differences we see along this populism axis for smiling. So we'll turn to political style. So here we have political violence and personal attacks to opponents. And what we see is that we have a significant positive effect of populism reverse coded. So, well, going in the way we could expect. So the political style of populism seems to be associated with more smiling when we compare in the 3 countries. However, when we consider only France, so we can also discuss this comparison because we not necessarily have the same degree of populism in the different countries. But when we focus only in France, we have a different results, and we do not find again this association between political style and smiling, suggesting that, well, it may not be the driver, although it may play a role. And finally, the ideological profile. So here we have some variables that are significant, but not others. So the economy regulation has no significant effect, but what we consider when we consider minority rights and cultural superiority, parties that are less populist seems to smile more. So that confirm the association we had before. So here again, the ideological profile seems to play a role when we compare in countries in the cross-sectional approach. However, we do not find and replicate this association in time. So the fact that we do not necessarily replicate this association in times may mean different things. The first one, that this association may, well, only appear recently, or well, actually, it is due to the specific parties that are more populist today. But actually, when we consider populism as a larger and longer phenomenon, we saw that it changed. And so we do not have this association when we consider longer period of times. So we see the interest of also having these two approaches, cross-sectional and longitudinal. So as a conclusion, we have we show a link between populism, the level of parties population, and differences in LP self-presentation in their official portrait. So this is interesting because, well, smiling is somehow a decision. So we have something that may also be strategic, although we do not make any statement on this point here, but that would call for further investigation. MPs from more populist parties seems to smile less on average on their official portrait, so this is the result we have. And it seems rather associated with some kind of interesting component of populist parties than with specific ideology, strategy, or party organization, due to this lability when we look at longitudinal data versus cross-sectional data on this different aspect of populism. So, well, what seems to be the case and to be stable is that it seems to be an association between the degree of social trust of the supporters of the party and of the target population of the party and the MP smiling. And it seems that this degree of social trust, so at least in France, is the best predictor of MP smiling. That would suggest that actually in this official portrait, we have an example of politicians trying to match the social preferences of their electors, and not necessarily advertising specific political values, ideologies, or agenda. So thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to thank also the 3 collaborators on this project, Romain Lachal, Léonard Guillou, and Nicolas Baumard, and I will be very happy to take your questions.
Thanks a lot, Lou. Great presentation, and I must say I love this picture you have here in the end. That's really nice. Hey, okay, so I see a couple of new names today. Very nice to see all of you, 20 people today. You can type your questions into the Q&A box, and Lou, you can see the questions, but I will read them aloud because the participants can't see. There's already a first question. That's great, from Haley Kelsall. Thanks for this very interesting presentation, Lou. I may have missed it, apologies if so, but how did you measure the degree of smiling? That's a good question because I had the same question actually.
Yeah, so sorry, I was a little bit fast on this, but we use an algorithm that detects actually the facial action units in the pictures. And so I take the zygomaticus activation. So we have a continuous measure of the zygomaticus activation that indicates this degree of smiling. So for me, it gives a first idea of how much smiling people, how much they are smiling. One interest of having this algorithm instead of having real coders for action units is that this algorithm is very sensitive actually to pose and like even if the face is tilted or not. So actually it may be biased as like general viewers are, but I aim to replicate this with real participant evaluations.
And did you use something like OpenFace for this, or is this a self-designed algorithm?
No, it's OpenFace.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
But it's not face reader.
Yeah, we can talk about this later. Okay, Christian People, you had a question too.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. Super interesting. I was wondering, you showed the results for populism and its effect on smiling. And I was wondering, to what extent can you separate populism here from ideology? Because if I understood it correctly, you did not control for ideology of the politician. And I assume that most of the populists in those 3 countries are on the at least very conservative or far right spectrum.
So, so thank you for your question. So I didn't run the model controlling for ideology yet for the 3 countries. However, in France, in which we had these 2 tails, so far right and far left, that are defined as a populist or kind of high on populist scale. When we control for ideology, actually, we have no effect. And this was one thing that I was interested in, is whether this smiling versus not smiling, or this presentation, self-presentation, reflects ideologies, or whether it reflects something else in terms of political communication. And it seemed that it reflects something else, and that's what we have for French data, but I have to replicate it for cross-sectional data, indeed.
Sorry, when you said you controlled for it, you didn't find an effect, you mean you didn't find an effect for populism, or you didn't find an effect for ideology then?
No effect for ideology, and it has an effect of populism.
All right.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, thanks. Very clear. Next question from Maika Homan. Thanks for your presentation. I was wondering, I see in almost all your results you find a significant gender effect. Can you explain this?
So I would provide 2 answers, although they are quite speculative. But first, we know that politician representation, when it's women or men, may not have the same code, so that may explain differences, and this is why I included it in the model. Also, the other thing is that as we use an automatic algorithm, the algorithm may be biased in some ways for like detecting better smiling in women or men, and so this is also why I control for that.
Okay, thanks. I have a question, actually based on what I'm currently looking at. Is your results are about smiling, but I guess it's obvious to also think about angry expressions. I see a lot of red dots here with the angry expressions. Is this something you looked at as well?
So yeah, so I looked at the corrugator activation for anger, and here I do not have. So I was quite surprised, but actually I do not have any results, and it is, I think, due to the fact that we lack variability, because like almost none of them are like really actively angry on their pictures. So they may like just not be smiling, but not actively angry. But I think maybe we should take it as a continuum between anger and happiness that is more related to like a really affiliative intent.
What do you think is the role of facial characteristics in identifying these emotions?
This is this is a good question, and this is why I want to replicate on the with real participant ratings. I am still quite confident that the algorithm is able to extract action units. The other thing that I am why I'm confident about this is also because we know that by changing the pose, for instance, or like we do not need makeups or even lighting, but just by tilting the face in a certain way, we can really shape the way we are perceived. And so I guess that we are we have something that is measuring accurately smiling. Although here, what is interesting and why we cannot use participant ratings like just with all these pictures, because it will be very costly. So we have to find randomization to just present a sample of the faces and so on to participants. But the fact that we have so many faces allows to make statements about, like, in general we have like large trends associated with party's populism, but we cannot say like one specific individual on this specific picture wants to appear as smiling, but we see a general trend with populism associated with smiling. So that's why I think that although specific facial features may play a role even in this algorithm detection, I get that actually, as we may claim about like general samples of MPs' pictures and not on specific individual intention on specific pictures, I think it's not necessarily a problem.
Okay, thanks. Bert?
Yes, thanks, Lou, for this really interesting presentation. And I have a question. So you conclude by saying that populists might be smiling less because it's sort of a signal to their target audience, right? And I think this is a really interesting theoretical argument that does make sense in sort of that yeah, there might be some resonance between what politicians like to say and do and the makeup of their electorate, and not only in terms of policy positions and that people who are anti-immigration vote for an anti-immigration politician, but there are other links more at the psychological level. That said, I wonder, could you speculate a little bit about what this means for the decision to focus on images from the parliament, in a sense that I'm not sure about Hungary, actually, nor France or Germany, but how I see this in the Netherlands at least. Well, there are pictures that are sort of on the website of the parliament. So what, right? So that so are these pictures also used on their Twitter bio or their Instagram and TikTok? And if not, would the logical extension of the project not be to go in that direction? But I could see the difficulty because immediately people are less standardized than in the parliamentary images. So could you say a little bit about how your theoretical argument matches with the decision to focus on the parliamentary images?
So my argument would be that actually we have so this is something that is not necessarily a lot of people look at this website. I completely agree. However, this is an exercise that they have to do when they are elected, and that there is this official in France and in Hungary at least official picture sessions in which they come and pose and so on. So it's still an exercise of political communication and of official political communication, which is quite different from what we have on Twitter or Facebook, because they can change the image and so on. Here they cannot. They have one picture per mandate, and that's it. So this is something interesting, because this is somehow how they want to appear, like historically, I would say. To that, like knowing that it's not necessarily very looked at, but for instance, in France, we collaborate with the National Assembly, and we have actually this kind of portrait since the beginning of the 20th century. So these are things that are kept, and this is why I was interested in this, because this is a kind of official portrait they have to do. If we focus on the president's official portraits, we have like a much smaller data set, unfortunately. While here we have a lot of people from variety of parties, and this is why I was interested in this. But of course, I agree that would be super interesting to compare first this with the official image on the political ads before the election, to see if there is a switch in the way they present themselves, and also to compare it with more real day-to-day communication via social medias, and even like video, like TV shows and so on. But I would say that there is still this interesting material, that there is this kind of historical, like fixed picture for one mandate that shows something.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I saw it on the Dutch news yesterday that the new members in parliament, also the moment they had to get into the parliamentary building, they had to show identification, but then the first thing, they had to take their official picture taken in order to get that on their ID cards and enter. So just a question out of curiosity, would the reverse also be true? That so if we ask citizens to make an image of themselves, would you expect then that they also smile less if they're populist, have more preferences for populists, as a way of signaling less social trust, or is it unique to the elite?
My idea that it is not unique to the elite, and actually the elite want to match the electors' preferences and want to signal that they're alike. But that would be interesting. I'm not sure that the degree of populism of individuals would be well associated with much more or less smiling, but I think the degree of general social trust in this kind of exercise may be associated with more or less smiling, because more willingness to communicate more or less affiliative intentions and cooperative intentions. Because what I think is interesting with this kind of very official, in a way, neutral portraits is that they are not well specifically addressed to a specific population. It's like seems to be like addressed to anyone. So it is also interesting to see how people communicate in this kind of very artificial way of communication when we take an evolutionary perspective, because we're not supposed to communicate with, I don't know who is going to receive my message. So I think it reveals something about like the general, well, yeah, general psychology, or like more general dynamics, political dynamics.
Thanks, Lou. There's a question from Annemarie Walter. Welcome, Annemarie. Good to see you here. But I think you've maybe partially answered it already. She asks, where do the photos come from? Is there a source effect?
So the all the photos come from the official official website of the Assembly, of the National Assembly. So they are not like taken from Wikipedia, because like we like on Wikipedia website like this one, we can have pictures that are not actually the official portrait. So here we're sure that this is the official portrait. Concerning the source effect, as we have one source per country and we control for country effect, I think that it should not be a problem. But indeed, if yes, so this is our way of controlling for this, and also for having a very high quality image in our data set.
Matthijs Roduin, our expert on populism, couldn't be here today, but I'm pretty sure I know him well enough to ask the question he definitely would have asked. Well, I think it's actually more a suggestion. So, I mean, his perspective on populism is a so-called ideational perspective. So the definition of populism should really relate to the ideas that these parties propagate, the common element in these ideas. So I think he would be very enthusiastic about the first definitions of populism you used, like the focus on the anti-establishment rhetoric. But I think he wouldn't be surprised by the lack of effects you find regarding particularly party organization or personalized leadership, because these are elements that are sometimes associated, well, maybe often associated with populism, but not uniquely associated with populism. So there are also parties that are not populist, but have a very sort of centralist leadership structure, and there are parties with a very personalized a leader, but we're not populist. So my advice would be, or the ghost of Matthijs in this in this meeting, is that I think you should focus on the first definitions. I think that's super interesting. But I indeed would be very much interested in exploring more the ideology effects, both economic left-right and social cultural left-right. And I would be particularly interested in whether if you would combine left-wing, so like make a dummy variable or something for left-wing populists and right-wing populists, if you would have the same effect. And then with left-right, I'm trying to emphasize the social cultural left-right. What would be your intuition about what you would find?
So I can answer because this is something I tried but only on the French data set and not on the rest. But my intuition was that like more socially liberal parties will display like more smiling, because, well, like for me, like this kind of supporting minority rights and openness and so on may relate to like appearing like happier and more open and so on. So this was my big assumption, my big hypothesis, and this was not true in France. Actually, we find the opposite. So we have actually parties supporting minority rights appear as, I think we have it, yes. Parties supporting minority rights are less smiling. So yeah, this was completely counterintuitive. And actually by investigating this question, and in France we have this kind of thing in which like the center right is elected by the wealthiest people and those who have a higher level of general social trust. I was wondering whether there was relation between these two, and that actually it was not the ideological content, but really something that is linked with the support, the like socio-demographic characteristics and value characteristics of the supporters and of the target population. And this is why I looked at social trust, and it seems to work. So yes, so maybe we have here the case in which there is a distinction between this ideology, values, social values, and what could be advertised as social values through non-verbal communication, and what we have here with official portraits and willingness to match the expectation of the target population and supporters. So it seems something to be really, as you said, intrinsic to to the core characteristics of populism, and not to like things are related to populism, but that not specific to populism. So this is why I thought it was interesting to.
Thanks a lot. Bert, you have a question?
Yeah, I raised my hand.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by this idea of the sort of the signaling and learning from you a little bit about how you think this signaling works. Is this sort of a characteristic that is innate, and so, or that this is as before I was a populist politician, I also would be smiling less? Or is it something that once you become a politician, you learn how to do? And so are we born to smile more or less, or are we strategically doing this, or is this in the course of socialization and training within the populist party where we're picking up cues that we should smile less? Is that so? What are your thoughts on this?
So we make a predictive modeling of when somebody wants to become a populist politician based on the activity of your psychomaticus.
I'm not sure we can do this.
Infant smiling and populist in later life.
But yes, I'm pretty sure we cannot do this. But actually, this is a good question, because when we look at like general communication of populist leaders, like famous populist leader, would it be Trump, would it be Bolsonaro, we can see that they are actually smiling on a lot of their pictures. They're like also like Bolsonaro is like crooning and like really smiling and like, hey, like very, very happy and very joyful and so on. So this is why I was interested in these official portraits, because this official portrait has like something like more official. So it's like something they want to, this is another way of communicating. It's like no longer like a day-to-day communication, but something like a little bit more, let's say, historical. Even it's not necessarily that much historical, but something like official. And so I would say that anyone would smile like, and it is known like in the economic gain, when someone wants to cooperate, this person tends to smile more. And so when you want to cooperate, you tend to smile more. whether you're a populist or not, this is a way of signaling your cooperative intent. Actually, happiness is associated with perception of cooperative intent. So we have this literature, and here, what I think is interesting is to combine this literature, which is something that is very general on emotion perception and nonverbal communication, with and cooperation, with this literature, like in politics, and with the specific context of politics. And actually, I would not say that like even the most populist, or the less smiling MP on the official portrait will not be smiling when like he or she meets their family. So this is something that is interesting to see how people can, change their way of communicating when they are in this official position. And as you say, this is interesting. That would be interesting to compare it with other kind of communication to see whether we have something that is indeed specific to this official portrait or something that is more general. And I would say that we have something that is quite specific still to this official portrait.
One suggestion that maybe it makes no sense, but is maybe it's very different when populists are interacting with their actual audience, with their actual voters, that here they might, in parliament, they might want to signal their challenger nature.
Yes.
So that might be one. Yeah,
so I tried to said this, but I was not very convinced by my measure, because I had a proxy of whether it's a pariah party. So I thought like maybe like pariah parties will tend to like show that they are different or like that. It's fine. But we have no, I've not seen any effect yet. But yeah, this is something I wanted to investigate, because in these populist parties we have both communicate like characteristics, but one of the characteristics is that often they're like outsiders, no longer in every country now, but they want to challenge the establishment and so on. So I would like to have this kind of measure, and I'm still looking for it. So yeah, I hope I will be able to answer your question soon.
I have a question. Quite often, also the literature on evolutionary psychology brings up this link between disgust and conservatism. Is that something you could investigate with your data set?
Can you say it again? Sorry, I didn't get the question.
So quite often in evolutionary psychology, there's this link between disgust and conservatism. Is that something you would be able to find in your data set too, you think?
So no. Why? Because I think that actually there is not that many emotions they signal in this official portraits. It's like quite stereotyped. So it's like, I think like more or less smiling is that the biggest variation we can have. But indeed, this is something I would like to investigate in the future, the link between emotion signaling and perception, and not in the political context, and whether politicians signaling disgust and not in this official portrait, but like via photo or any kind of media, tends to be more appreciated by certain voters, and notably whether disgust is something that is specific to conservative voters, if it's valued by these voters, or whether actually as disgust signals the presence of some kind of pathogen threat in the environment, and therefore has some kind of cooperative content, because it provides information about the environment. Whether people who often signal disgust are actually perceived as better cooperators and more valued in those who value social trust. So yeah, these are questions I would like to investigate, but unfortunately, these official portraits are nice because they're very standardized, but they are also very stereotyped. So I cannot test every question with this. But I think this kind of methodology could be, it would be interesting to apply it to larger data sets and more diverse data sets with Twitter and Facebook pictures, and also campaign aids and so on. So and so we can investigate very large data set using this. Although we know that it is not as accurate as human ratings, it gives us a first idea of what's going on.
Okay, maybe expand a bit on the last thing you said, how the accuracy compares to human raters.
So I didn't. So for the normally for smile detection, it's quite good. I do not have the number exactly, so I use the program, the output of the program directly. Yeah, but still, it's never as accurate as a human rater. And also I think like for when I'm going to replicate with human raters, I will not ask like smiling intensity, but like degree of happiness or things like that are more natural, because actually we rarely naturally and spontaneously estimate the smiling intensity of people. But so yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Good to know. Bert, you have a question?
Well, yeah, that's a quick follow-up on this, because Patrick Stewart, who is a regular attendant of this meeting and knows much more about this than I do, but he talks about this FACS coding scheme and this relatively intensive training to be able to recognize if AUX is activated or not. But I do wonder then, if you ask about intensity in general, about whether are you validating the smile algorithm against something that is actually slightly different, or do you think it is conceptually the same if you ask about smiling intensity versus activity of whatever this action unit exactly is?
So I would say that for me, like smiling intensity approximated here is a more proxy of the kind of cooperative intent and affiliative intent intentions of the individual. So that's why for me, it would be reassuring to replicate the result with a different measure that is more natural,
okay.
With so affiliative intentions or anything like this. My second answer is that I know like action units training is like very, very important intensive training. And I know that the algorithm is not as good as a human rater. However, I think that it is not necessarily an issue, because maybe, well, this is my hypothesis, is that maybe this algorithm is more biased by the actual pose of the person on the picture, a little bit of maybe lighting, or like, I don't know, like face tilt or anything. And that actually that makes the evaluation looking maybe more like how much this person looks happy, for instance, than like precise muscle activation. And as this is what I'm interested, for me, it's not a big issue, but I agree that it's a big limitation still of using this kind of algorithm. However, I'm not sure that a expert coder of action unit would accept to code that many pictures. But yes, I agree, it's a big limit.
Bert, will you round up?
Yes, I forgot about the timing a little bit. Okay, so thank you, Lou. This was great, and we look forward seeing how this project develops. And I hope at some point that you'll be able to visit us in Amsterdam, or visit you in Paris as a presenter of the lab. We are promising everybody a Hot Politics mug. I don't know if Gijs has it on his desk or not. It's in the dishwasher. And mine is at the university and hasn't seen the day of light for a year now. But we'll send it to you at some point post-pandemic. last minute, maybe announce a couple of the speakers for the coming weeks. Next week, Friday is the last Friday of the month, and then our own Zoom master, Christian Piepal, will present his ongoing work on emotional rhetoric by politicians, and Neil Fashing, a master student from my department, is presenting his research on the emotional responses to police violence. Then on April 9th, because we skip a week because of the Easter weekend, Diamantis Petropoulos Petalas will present some of his ongoing work. He's a new postdoc on Gijs's ERC grant. On April 16th, Teresa Kuhn will present some of her work. She's an associate professor at the political science department. And on April 23rd, Liz Connors from the University of Southern, I like to say California, but it's not Southern California. It's
Carolina.
Carolina, right? That's slightly University of South Carolina will talk about some of her ongoing work. So I want to thank you all for participating today, and look forward to seeing you next week again.